Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Rasmus Lenworth. I'm the Assistant Vice Provost for Academic Alliances at Arizona State University. And we are super excited to celebrate National Transfer Week here at ASU. And as many of you know, National Transfer Week is being celebrated at community colleges and universities nationwide. And we are very happy to be part of all the festivities. I think we all need to highlight the importance of working with the transfer student population, and especially ensuring that they have the tools they need for success as they consider entering the workforce and which careers to pursue. As you know, there are many efforts across our nation that have been focusing and are focusing on workforce development. Be that grants, be that different programs, etc. And so we've decided to make this a year's theme of our version of National Transfer Week, the transfer trajectory into the workforce, from textbooks to handshakes. And so we've got a week lined up with sessions offered throughout the week that are built around this theme, and figuring out how all of us can support the tens of millions of workers that'll require new skills and training in the coming years to meet new workforce demands. AI has been all the rage in the last 6 months, and you can imagine all of the changes that are coming, which workers need to be prepared for. I think the ugly truth is that the American systems of higher learning, post-secondary education, are currently not performing as well as our international peers. And so the way I see it is that we all need to collaborate to address this issue. And certainly one way of doing so is helping ensure that learners at community colleges and universities experience a dramatic simplification of intake processes, credit evaluation systems, and their academic pathways tied to relevant careers and workforce opportunities. And I think that means education systems at all levels have to continue working together to create integrated processes that allow for meeting student needs as well as workforce demands. And that's really part of what we want to talk about today and during this week. I think at Arizona State University, we found that leveraging technology has to be done and is incredibly helpful in responding to the changing needs of today's students. Many of you being partners, you're familiar with one example of how we leverage technology with My Path to ASU, which essentially outlines transfer pathways built on a database including more than 1.4 million equivalencies from recently accredited institutions into ASU. And so My Path to ASU assists community college students nationally in planning their path to ASU with clear course recommendations and term-by-term steps that include the necessary applicable courses to complete their associate degrees at their respective home institutions. So in other words, from day one, as you start your career in a community college, it outlines which courses to take at the community college level to complete your eventual bachelor's degree at ASU, as well as following the pathways of the particular community college that the students enrolled in. In my view, we all have an obligation here to make sure that we include more students than we exclude. At ASU, this is fully integrated into the charter of our organization. You can see it in the shared screen right now, which is about being a university that measures itself by whom it includes, how they succeed, rather than whom we exclude. And so we want to keep this top of mind and reaching first-generation students, minoritized students, students from disadvantaged economic backgrounds, and providing equitable opportunities for those and the resulting upward mobility in the workforce is really an outgrowth and a reflection of that charter. I think the development of workforce is such a crucial topic for the future. And as we consider what we do together between ASU and our partners, but also internally at the university, we are increasingly focused on helping students transfer and to prepare them to enter the workforce. I think there's been a traditional split between transfer and workforce as different things. I don't believe in that. I don't think that is true. After all, many careers require a bachelor's degree or more education. But that doesn't mean that you couldn't be focused on that career from your first day at a community college. So with that, and hoping that Daniel's video is working, I'm delighted to introduce you to Daniel Barajas. He's the Chief Officer of Workforce and Economic Development for the Maricopa County Community College District, which of course is one of the country's largest districts. Daniel has over 25 years of experience working in post-secondary education within the community college system. He has held many positions in academic and student affairs, with years of service as Dean of Academics and Career and Technical Education. He holds a master's degree in educational leadership from NAU, Northern Arizona University, and he has a passion for ensuring educational opportunities and solutions to industry and community needs. Daniel is a big part of the community. He served on in councils and boards through his career, including the president for the Arizona Occupational Administrators Council, current roles as board members for the Council of the Phoenix Business and Workforce and the Arizona Chamber of Commerce, and serves on the Arizona Manufacturing Council. Daniel enjoys representing education to many industry partners and supporting and helping meet industry's needs for talent. And currently, he is a crucial member of the team that's working between the Maricopa District and ASU, working on the Pipeline AZ initiative to connect students to career pathways. And of course, transfer pathways are crucial to this initiative to ensure upward mobility for students by using tools like MyPath to ASU that I talked about before. So having said all of that, I welcome you to the week of National Transfer Week, focused on workforce development. And I want to extend a big welcome to our keynote speaker, Daniel Barajas. And with that, I'll turn it over to Daniel. And good to see that the video is on. Now we just need to unmute, and then we are running.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Rasmus. There's nothing like technical difficulties to wake you up in the morning.
That's right. A Monday morning of pure excitement. It's been great.
So thank you so much. I appreciate that awesome welcome. And it's my pleasure to certainly be here with the audience today. I want to thank ASU for having me, hosting me. It's truly an honor. But with that said, I feel fortunate to be able to come and speak a little bit about myself and in the area of workforce development. In particular, that's been my passion throughout my working life. And again, I hope to share some things that maybe some tips, tricks, and knowledge that will help you along if you're unfamiliar to the area of workforce development. And so with that, before I get into it a little further, I know that Rasmus gave you a little bit of my background, but a couple of other things that are, I think, relevant. Number one, I am a native Arizonan. I think we're becoming fewer and fewer, it seems, as we go. I hail from Yuma, Arizona, which is in the southwestern part of the state. And so, again, grew up in a small border town. And maybe most relevant, I started my educational career at Arizona Western Community College in Yuma, and I transferred to a public university that's down the road. So I'll just say that. So I am a transfer student. I'm a product of that system, and I'm very grateful for that. I put myself through school, working at the community college, starting as a work study student, ultimately progressing to part-time jobs in academic affairs, full-time jobs into both student and academic affairs. And so just kind of have had a long relationship with the community college space. I am a recovering academic dean. All that to say that in that space, again, developed a love affair with career and technical education. And as you know, career and technical education and workforce development really go hand in glove in terms of the work that's done in those spaces. And so as we move forward, I really want to kind of hit on a few things. One, I'm very thankful again to ASU as a partner. I think together we look at pathways for students as well as employers and a collective impact as we do work together. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Workforce development. If you didn't know, now you will know that workforce development is really about an ecosystem that occurs in our communities. that we live and work in, and I'm going to talk about that. And then I also want to talk about students. We have to be very thoughtful to students as we look through the lens of workforce development, because it's really them that will shape the needs of our academic and student products and services. And so I want to talk about students and those that we work with, and really the common ground that I think we'll find as I talk about the students in this presentation. And then I'll wrap up with a couple of program examples and how they were developed with the needs of students in mind. Next slide, please. So before I really get started, I just wanted to give a little context about the community college system. I know this is a little blurry, but this map really represents all of the community colleges in the state of Arizona. There are 10 college districts. The Maricopa Community Colleges happens to be one of those districts, but collectively, we're at nearly 300,000 students in terms of our total enrollment, and that's before the non-credit and continuing education opportunities that we offer. Next slide, please. More specifically, this map essentially outlines Maricopa County and the Maricopa Community College system. So this is the district that I represent. I work at the district level, and I get to provide workforce and economic development support to the 10 colleges that are within our district. Not only do we have 10 main campuses along with those colleges, but we have about 31 educational sites across the county. So we're a very large district, as Rasmus mentioned. We are, depending on who you ask on any given year, either the first or second largest community college system in the country. I think we trade off with Miami-Dade in Florida, for example, as we move forward. So very large and healthy system. So just a little bit about the partnership. I just want to, I guess, begin with this. There are many more ways that the community college, in this case, my district and Arizona State University, are connected, but I just wanted to give a few examples. The first, and a very easy one because it's very relevant, for those of you that play in the workforce space, in October, a number of grants were due, right? The application deadlines were in October. And so I'm fortunate to be able to partner with Arizona State University in what was a Tech Hub grant. We call it the M3 grant, which is a U.S. Economic Development Administration. We call it the EDA. That's a subsidiary of the U.S. Department of Commerce. But this Tech Hub grant that we wrote is called the Materials, Metals, and Manufacturing Grant. And that's really designed in order to look at collective impact as it relates to how do we grow the state's manufacturing training sector so that we can meet the employment demands of this really booming economy that we have here in the state of Arizona. So that's just an example of one of the grants we partner on. There are many more. So ASU and the Maricopa colleges will be co-leading the workforce development efforts in that space. Also, I'm very fortunate to participate with my colleagues from ASU on a workforce development committee that was recently launched. But it's this idea that we will come together and really focus on strategy and planning around training efforts, certainly curricular efforts as we move forward, and strategic alignment for the transfer of students. But we also get into, what are career service opportunities that we can jointly articulate together in spaces like that. As many of you know, it's not just the high school students that are coming to us, but we have a lot of students that come into the community college system that are already working adults. And so they're coming back to us to upskill or retrain. So as they come to us with this kind of list of potentially prior education, prior learning assessment becomes really an important tool first to create these efficient pipeline of opportunities for students. So our committee looks at things like that. And then lastly is, and has famously been in place for quite a long time, is this idea of transfer and articulation. Next slide, please. And so you see, we just don't say it, we practice it. If you were to click or take a look at that web link there, it would take you to this web page, which is really an admissions opportunity with Arizona State University. I'm very proud of this because, as it says right there in big bold letters, Maricopa Community College transfer students, and it's a welcoming opportunity. So I think we've developed this culture of opportunity where we want students to transfer in a very efficient and slick way. I'm going to date myself for a moment, but I remember when I was a transfer student many years ago, I had to sit down and there were these books, right, that you had to look at your community college class and how they crosswalked with the university classes. And left to your own devices, that could be completely a terrible and inefficient way to transfer to one of our public universities. So again, I'm so happy to have been part of the development of these articulation strategies that are really speaking to our students and their efficient transfer in this regard. Okay, so I'm going to change gears a little bit, and I'm going to want to speak to you about workforce development and what I call the new economy. I want to look and speak to you through the lens of three particular areas: that workforce ecosystem, and I'm going to explain that, how we look at students and their needs, and then also occupational programs that are developed from those needs. And so next slide, please. So when people ask me to tell them more about what workforce development is and what it consists of, one of the places that I like to start is this model that I've put together. It consists of 5 areas. The first being business, industry, and employers. So locally, big employers like Intel, the Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturing company, Boeing, Banner Health, right? They're number 1. Number 2, the government. So again, here for me locally, Maricopa County, the city of Phoenix, our state office of economic opportunity, the governor's office, the mayor's offices, they play a big part of this ecosystem. Number 3, economic development. So the Greater Phoenix Economic Development Council, GPEC, we refer to it as, the Arizona Chamber, Arizona councils as we go forward, community-based organizations. So I'm sure Boys and Girls Club, Goodwill, Chicanos por la Causa, and then Fresh Start, which is a women's organization that I'm going to mention a little bit later. They are also part of this ecosystem. And then lastly, the educators. So the community colleges, of course, the university partners. We have career and technical education districts here within our valley, as well as the Arizona Department of Education, really kind of round out this ecosystem. But it's my contention and in my kind of operational knowing that if you have all of these 5 in line, life is going to be much easier for you in order to upstart a new workforce development or economic development initiative. If you're missing one of these core components, it becomes and can become very difficult. So this is, again, just level setting some context here. So again, depending on the region that you're in, I just wanted to share this with you. Right now, Arizona, we say Arizona is hot, Phoenix is hot. If you've been paying attention, we're attracting at an unprecedented rate new employers to our valley. And why are we doing that? Well, a really good friend of mine, her name is Chris Mackey from the city of Phoenix. She's an economic developer, would share that these 6 reasons are why we're attracting talent. A favorable business environment, for example, economic incentives are part of that. A talented, diverse, and inclusive workforce. Strong culture of entrepreneurship. This idea that Arizona can be an ideal logistics position. So geographically, where we're geographically located. Stable climate and operating environment. While it does get hot here in Arizona, all things being equal, it's a very stable place to be. And then the idea that we do have natural resources here. If we were in a classroom setting, I'd probably ask you, what's the number 1 of these 6 that employers are really looking for right now? And the answer would be the inclusive workforce. So with anybody that I'm engaging with right now, workforce is really the number 1 topic of the day. Next slide, please. And again, to further give you context, in many regions across the country, certainly, you will find industry prioritized sectors These happen to be those that I work with here in the Maricopa area: healthcare, manufacturing, IT and cyber, business, finance, construction, and education are really kind of the big ones. They're not the only ones, but they're the big ones. And then you can subset, for example, manufacturing. Within advanced manufacturing, you have areas like semiconductor, electric vehicles, battery storage, and on down the line. So again, every region, if you're a workforce developer, is really kind of breaking out these priority areas. We happen to work very closely with the states of Texas, for example, Florida, Ohio, because we have mutual interests and do a lot of partnering across states as we look through these kinds of lenses. So next slide, please. Okay, so I talked about a student-centered or student focus, and I wanted to share some statistics with you because, again, in order to develop the right kind of programs, I think you need to know who your students are. And so just in the spring of 2023, my district launched this Hope Center survey of student basic needs, and we had about nearly 6,000 respondents to this. And so I wanted to walk through this with you. Maybe you'll see some commonalities, maybe you'll see some differences, but I'll kind of move through this quickly. 52% of our students are part-time. 34% have been in college for less than 1 year. And you can see some of the other information. I'm not going to read through every bullet for you. Next slide, please. 82% own their own computer for their schoolwork. 5% are using only smartphones, and 10% are using public devices or borrowed devices. Next slide, please. And again, one of the things maybe you can think about as I'm going through these statistics is, how are these statistics and the way that these students are, how is that connected to workforce? Because I'll make the connection here in just a little bit. 74% of our students are working. 15% are working more than one job, right? A hard thing to do. 29% have children. 41% are caring for someone regularly. That means not necessarily their own children, but also it could be a parent or other relatives or friends and family. 53% drive to campus, and 33% don't have the means to regularly go to a campus. Next slide, please. 13% do not have health insurance. As a father with a student and a son that has a disability, this is meaningful to me. 3% are registered with disability. Another 14% have a disability but have not registered with the campus. I think that there's a breakdown there within our student affairs, something to think about. 13% are not U.S. citizens, foster care students, veterans, and previously incarcerated individuals, and those become important to the workforce space. As part of the survey, this question was posed: what does the world need to know about what it's like to be a college student? So this is really the result of a word cloud, if you will. And so in green there, many students would say it's great, but overwhelmingly you got responses like stressful, expensive, hard, and challenging, which becomes really important as we go forward with the kind of programming that we want to offer. Another really important opportunity here is this idea of childcare support. 89% of our students said that childcare is unaffordable, while 14% missed 3+ days due to lack of childcare. So again, if we were in a classroom setting, we might stop and talk about this a little further. But think about that. These, if you could please return to the last slide. Thank you. If you think about this, if students are having these kinds of challenges and are having to miss this significant amount of time as it relates to their childcare shortcomings and their ability to attend class, what would that mean to them in the work environment? How difficult would that be? And one thing that I would share is that if you were to look at the new federal legislation, the CHIPS Act, which is a manufacturing incentives act, and the employers that are applying for CHIPS Act dollars right now, embedded in that application is a section that will ask the employer, how are you going to reconcile and provide support in the childcare space? So again, this has now moved past just the educators and community members need to find childcare support solutions. It's now being posed to the employers. It's now become a very universal opportunity. Next slide, please. And so I'll end the statistics here, but 43% of students are experiencing food insecurity, 53% housing insecurity, in 14% of our students, these are active students, are experiencing homelessness. And so I would share with you that if you're a student affairs individual out there, potentially an advisor, for example, that are working with students, here's the connection. Food insecurity, housing insecurity, homelessness, transportation, and childcare are now workforce and economic development issues. So it could be that there's a different philosophy here. Rather than looking at developing your own in-house programs, it could be that you're meeting with your workforce development team, economic development team, or local employers and asking them to be part of the solution to what I don't think has traditionally been laid at the feet of an employer, right? But now it's a universal problem. The need for employees is so great that they have to become part of your solution moving forward. So I wanted to ensure that I made mention of that because it's really a matter for the day. And so shifting gears again into this idea of developing now with students in mind and that environment in mind, how do we go about now developing the right kind of academic programs that can support a student and then move them into employment, right, in the most efficient way possible? So this is an example of a diagram that I and my team have put together. This happens to speak to the advanced manufacturing sector. It was really designed for semiconductor students, actually. So what I want to do, I'm just going to give you a quick walk through this diagram. In the center of the diagram, and maybe most importantly, I think educators with a workforce development lens are starting to design academic programs with job types and job roles at the core of them. You can see the progression from the bottom to the top. In terms of technicians level in manufacturing, operators can graduate to technicians, leads, managers, all the way up to engineers, and then to leadership management. But what we did was we started on the ground floor as community colleges, looking at entry-level opportunities. And so we developed what essentially was born around a boot camp, a 10-day opportunity that I'm going to speak to here in just a second. But we're starting to articulate and align the idea of an educational attainment level with, again, the job type or job role, which is making for a more efficient model, at least from our perspective, in the way that we're offering and designing programs. To the very far right, you also see, and I'm so sorry that it's so small, kind of that bracket, it says job off-ramps. So again, thinking about the students that are in our classrooms, we need to find efficient ways for them to maybe start at an entry-level space within academics as well as employment, allow them to maybe get that job, start earning some money, and then persist back into school. In the perfect paradigm or scenario these days, we're finding that, for example, if a student was able to get entry-level skills training, start working with an Intel, the potential is great that Intel will then have tuition reimbursement benefits that'll allow that student to then persist up the chain while gainfully employed with benefits and putting food on the table and eliminating some of those basic needs that they have most immediately. So those things become very, very important moving forward. So how does that manifest itself in terms of a newly developed program? Well, what you see here is really just kind of was the marketing piece for a semiconductor technician quick start training that we developed. So this is kind of a new evolution within the past year and a half based on that pyramid and based on our student needs. of the kind of program that we could develop. So this happens to be a 10-day training. Mind you, it's very intensive, it's full days. It's predicated on the idea that students will get hands-on experience while going through the training with instructors from the semiconductor industry. We were able to marry into that a stipend that students would receive upon successful completion of the program, with investors from the Commerce Authority and some others. They would be earning industry recognized credentials, which makes them more marketable through this process. Along with the opportunity that at level 1, there would already be an opportunity to interview for full-time positions with benefits. Next slide, please. So again, this process and this program started for us in June of 2022. And again, it's really a new design for us that has really now started to permeate all other sectors of our training. Again, it's an accelerated model. I talked a little bit about this idea of the ability to get a job, but also earning college credit and then being able to stack not only this introductory level class, but that then stacks into an Associate of Applied Science degree, which becomes important in just a moment. One of the really kind of cool things about this is that we knew that it would be best taught by industry. And so we worked with Intel as kind of our beta. And when we sent out the all call for, are there any employees out there that would want to instruct in a program like this? We had more than 100 applications or letters of interest come through. Of that, we recruited 49 individuals. And of that, we now have 20 Intel employees that are currently adjunct faculty for us that are training within this specific program. Another difference that was made is marketing is not just the educational provider's obligation any longer. We've been put in a position where Intel, because they're now vested, is helping with the marketing efforts. State organizations like the Arizona Commerce Authority, the Office of Economic Opportunity, and employers jumping in has become the norm. Again, that ecosystem, if you can get them involved, things will be much better for you. This is also very important. Working with the employers, we have an advisory of about 25 manufacturers in their supply chain. They are now sending regularly their recruiters to our college campuses in order to hire directly out of these classes. And so we're bringing everything to the college campus to make it ease of use. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is definitely a priority for us. And I think in starting these new types of programs, we need to go into them with great intentionality. One of our goals when we started to have this new program in manufacturing was the idea that we wanted to increase the number of women technicians as well as the general diversity. And so one of the first things that we did was we reached out to an organization called Fresh Start. Fresh Start is a women's organization that helps with women that maybe have challenges or have those types of basic needs that I talked about earlier. And we had an all-female cohort come through. They were highly successful, but again, very intentional in the way that we wanted to roll out our program. And lastly, again, I mentioned it, having the ecosystem and state level partnerships come together to become investors in marketing and support and even financial or equipment donations becomes really important. Next slide, please. And this, again, is kind of the fruits of that labor. So after essentially 1 year, so what happened with that grand experiment in this quick start model? Well, a few things very, very proud of. Number one, if you were to take a look at kind of our traditional classes as they stand in the statistics, and you mirror them against what is this student semiconductor data, you start seeing some really obvious differences. Number one, just to look at the Hispanic or Latino or Latinx population, it was greater than or more significant than the traditional course in that space. Moving to the right, and this is probably my favorite one, is this idea of first generation students. 51% of the 731 students that have now gone through this 10-day process with us, 51% of them declared as first-generation students. We were able to go and speak to some of these students, and many of them said that they never saw themselves going to college, right? And so it was this idea that, but because it was a 10-day opportunity, they saw a very bite-sized, manageable opportunity to start classes. And they also knew that there was going to be a hiring opportunity subsequent to the 10 days. I'm proud to announce that overwhelmingly, students are either directly employed at this point in time that are coming out of this program, or they've decided to persist with their college education. Many of them with their associate's degrees, with eyes set on transfer to Arizona State University, very interested in the engineering process. But again, a group of students that would have never even attempted going to college had it not been for this new type of programming. And so that becomes very important. In workforce development, one of the things that we often talk about is if we're to meet the new employment needs of our employers, we can't rely on the same pipelines. Of course, the traditional pipelines like high school graduates is going to become very important and remain part of the solution. But adults that are re-careering, upskilling, the idea of students that would have never gone to college, and looking at them as a different demographic or a new market are going to become very important to us. So as we kind of bring them in through the front door of the community college, how are we also maximizing those students in their desire to persist in their education and ultimately transfer into the university system becomes very important. And then lastly, the bottom left, sorry about that. The bottom left, again, if you were to look at our community college occupational programs, especially those that are more non-traditional, in other words, programs where maybe the female or the male population isn't as significant. In manufacturing, for most programs, we have about 10% female participation, but in this Quick Start initiative, we're at 36%. Again, I think that intentionality, working with an organization like Fresh Start, really has made a difference in the way that we're seeing how to develop programs and then market them moving forward. Next slide, please. And so with that, I've come to my conclusionary slide here. In conclusion, again, I think I was able to share just a little bit, kind of a dipped your toe in the water as it relates to the kind of partnerships that ASU and the Maricopa Community Colleges have. We, again, are very thankful for that partnership and that articulation. Now you know a little bit more about that ecosystem that I think will drive us to success and who you might want to lean into as it relates to maybe new partners in the kind of work that you're doing. Again, we have to be really thoughtful to students. You know, they will shape our products and services moving forward, and it has to be an intentional strategy. And then lastly, my team likes to kind of lean on this reference or this quote quite a bit. Wayne Gretzky, right, the famous hockey player. I'm not a hockey player by any means, but if you think about Wayne Gretzky, when asked what made him a great hockey player, he said, well, a good hockey player plays where the puck is. A great hockey player plays where the puck is going to be. And I'd like to think that, you know, as it is National Transfer Week and this opportunity that ASU has really stood up, I think it's organizations like Arizona State University and our community college system here within Maricopa. I think we're moving to where the puck is going to be. And I'm very proud of that partnership. And again, 100 more examples, but I know my time was brief today. I'm very happy to answer any questions that you may have, but again, very thankful to have your time and attention today.
That was great. Thanks so much for your time, Daniel. That was great, and thanks for the walkthrough. I'll jump in with the first question and see if anybody else wants to piggyback. But that idea around technology changing and that the labor market, therefore, the change is accelerating. Could you tell a little bit about the collaboration between ASU and Maricopa, how we work together, and maybe any thoughts on how others elsewhere could replicate or borrow or steal, for that matter, any of the things that work well, or maybe some of the things that they should be on the lookout for as they think about this kind of collaboration between community colleges and universities in a really workforce-oriented way.
Yeah, I think from a workforce and economic development perspective, that the thing that I think we're all working through right now, kind of the tie that binds us, if you will, is this idea of the emerging technology fields, right? Again, EV, semiconductor, certainly battery storage, and the list goes on. When I think about the relationship between ASU and the community college system, so university versus community colleges, it probably goes without saying, but I think the community colleges represent really kind of this applied space, right? This ground of doing occupational awareness, recruitment, and enrollment, but with a very intentional strategy to then move these students along into the university system. The universities are so great, ASU, at kind of the research and development side of the house and meeting employers at the engineering level in many cases. But we're starting to see some common opportunities that are really interesting as we work with the universities. One is we've gotten or had some conversations where perhaps there's some benefit to having an ASU or an NAU engineering student come back down into the community college and work within the lab space, right? Kind of in this applied learning opportunity. So there's some new connections that are availing themselves as it relates to this new economy, new market of this new technology. And so I think this new economy, in my opinion, is really kind of changing the game from the standpoint of it's no longer, you have to community college first, university second. And it's that kind of that series progression. It's a back and forth opportunity for our students. I think the university, ASU, and us, we're recognizing that, and we're starting to build strategies around that. I think the other thing that binds us is we, in an unprecedented way, are getting approached by employers for new training solutions. And employers don't know what they don't know. And so I think ASU and the Maricopa colleges are working to define and develop maybe more of a menu of services and academic products in order to present and provide employers with a more efficient way to look at how they can invest in us and get a better return. In the past, I think it's been very siloed. Universities, community colleges, and then even within the community college space, we've been very siloed. So I think there's just this amazing trend in the right direction, in my opinion, for collaboration, information sharing, resource sharing and gathering in order to develop stronger continuums of education. And so I would invite anyone out there, if you're not in the state of Arizona, to come and speak with those of us on that workforce committee that I mentioned earlier, to come and learn about some of these new principles that are guiding us moving forward.
Yeah, I'll get back to that in just a second. I'll share two thoughts based on what you said. One is that idea around employer relevance and how that, how the connection of the programming offered by post-secondary institutions and employers. The way I see it is that most students, I would even say the vast majority of students, have some sense of social mobility when they go to college. And so their end goal, even if they don't know what specifically it is to get a good job when they're done with college. And so I think it's incumbent on universities and community colleges, and frankly, any other provider in the post-secondary space, to really think about how do we support students towards a career. And I think too often we're too focused on our own stuff, this type of program versus that type of program, what kind of iPads, like all of the nonsense. And I think it's really about saying, what's the outcome the student is looking for is, in the vast majority of cases, a great job. And so helping them get there means tying in with employers. It means connecting students with career services. I think the second point I want to make is the credit mobility is really key. So moving from community college to your bachelor's degree to your graduation works for the few. Many more students than that go to multiple institutions. They accrue credits in dual enrollment, dual credit. They move from the community college to the university and back. They take a couple of classes online. They do some, all of the permutations and the complexity means that students need to be able to bring their learning in relevant package chunks and have that learning applied to their program wherever they're going. And so I really see the way forward is around building systems that allow students to be their own navigators, the owners of their own learning, and being able to bring that between institutions and frankly other types of providers as well, so that they are the holders of their learning. So anyway, that's an editorial comment. You can disagree or agree or disagree. Daniel. I did want you to just touch a little bit more on that workforce committee, and maybe I'll just give a little bit of context. We've got a set of standing committees that have worked for a long time between Maricopa and ASU, where we, because of proximity and because of long-standing personal relationships, work together to figure out all kinds of issues and how to support students. One of those committees is around workforce. Could you just share a few thoughts on that and how it ties into kind of the bigger Arizona strategy and both in terms of manufacturing and other types of industries in Arizona and the work that your and my respective institutions are doing?
Yeah, I think whether it be grant applications or the committee work that we do, I think everything is centered on this idea. In to be frank, I think the educational providers in this state now have an obligation or a role, certainly a duty, to working with employers and our state government to develop an environment that's really conducive to meeting the employment needs, right? So that those training pipelines and pathways have to be very clear. In the state of Arizona, in my opinion, and I think it's happening nationally, you're starting to see state alignments around becoming collective impact solutions. I think long gone, I like to believe, are the days of this competitive nature between educational institutions, and that can be public universities, private universities, the K through 12 system, to be honest with you, as well as community colleges. If you were to stand up all of the kind of the collective need just in manufacturing around the number of employees needed in that space, collectively, we don't have the collective output in order to really meet those needs. So again, that competitive nature needs to go out the window, in my opinion. We need to be working in a more articulated and collaborative way in order to provide, again, the collective employees that our state is going to require. So the environment has really changed or been turned on its head. I think it's a wonderful thing, in my opinion. But again, it gives an opportunity for our committee, for example, to now start thinking about our strategies and our planning moving forward to really embrace and embody the idea that we're going to collectively be a solution. And in the past, I don't know that that was always the case. And so I think we've really graduated into that. So certainly focused on the student needs. I talked about a lot of those basic student needs because we need to know who our students are and how we shape our strategies around them. Because at the end of the day, as Rasmus said, the end goal is to get these individuals into gainful employment, right? No matter how you slice it. And so I think focused on students collectively putting our heads together, we're in a much better moment in time where we're doing that, and we're creating solutions not only from community colleges to the university, but also down into the K through 12 system. I think you're starting to see this more longitudinal effort by way of planning, and that's one of the things that we're accomplishing within that committee. So I know I'm not getting very detailed, that's very high level, but again, everything from looking at prior learning solutions, how dual enrollment for students really impacts the kinds of software platforms. We're even talking about how we look at industry recognized credential alignment, because it could be that ASU favors one potential industry recognized credential over what we're doing. We need to start bringing those into alignment as well, so that we can impact that student on behalf of the employer in a more collective way. So I'm hoping that's what you were.
Great. That's great. Yeah, thank you so much. And by the way, thank you so much for participating, and thank you for your presentation. I thought that was illuminating and helpful in kind of understanding the context. With that, I'll say thank you to everyone for joining as well. Thank you as the keynote speaker to come out. I do want to encourage everyone to check out the rest of the week's programming. It's a little clunky, the URL here, but it's provost.asu.edu. Oh, wait a second, I got my own. /national-transfer-week-partners. So National Transfer Week Partners can go here and see the session lineup and join us for more sessions. So thank you so much, Daniel, for coming and speaking to us. Thank you so much to all of the participants. I want to encourage all of you to join more sessions and go out and help some more students succeed. So I think that's what it's all about. So with that, any final words, Daniel? Otherwise, I'll let everyone get 5 minutes back.
I will just say, thank you again to the ASU team for inviting me. I feel like my presentation was a little clunky. I try to fit a lot into that space. Each one of those probably deserves its own presentation. But again, thank you, and we really remain available. I'm not joking. I think ASU and the Maricopa colleges to have you visit or reach out. Would love to work with you and help you find solutions if we can. Absolutely. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Those are great ending words. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day. Bye.